morning, everyone. In the last class, we are trying to find out the JDBC related information with XML configuration and annotation example we identified in the last class. So today we are going to discuss more about the Hibernate integration here. So first we'll try to find out the Hibernate, the basic part here. So once we familiar with the Hibernate, like now, we'll try to focus on. Okay. So we'll try to focus on the Hibernate information. So in that case, now what we are doing here, we are trying to download the one jar called Hibernate Core. So this jar is downloaded. So once this particular jar is downloaded, now what we can do, and here we'll try to find out the Hibernate Core related information here. So now you can see session is the session interface is coming from the org.hibernate package here. So that now what you are understanding, Hibernate Core related the function, the jar's information is downloaded here. Okay. So basically, Hibernate we already discussed here. Hibernate is our one of the ORM tool here. Getting the point. So with the help of this particular ORM tool, how we are going to implement the functionality here. So to implement this particular Hibernate related functionality, now what I'm doing here, I'm going to create one more package here. Let me create the package here. com.spring.hibernate, and we'll try to focus on the Hibernate related information inside this particular package. I'm going to create one class here. So this particular class is going to provide the welcome message. So how we are going to integrate this particular welcome message in our Hibernate applications here. So for this, I am going to create message class. So this particular message is our model class we are going to call. This particular model class will contain, okay, let me increase the font size. And here, okay, so this is the message class we are having. Inside this particular message class, we can provide some of the properties here. So private long ID, right, and message. And here, I'm going to make one more object reference here, that is called next message. How many the properties we are having here? 3 properties here. So using these particular 3 properties here, how we are going to implement the simple example here. So first we'll provide the default constructor, and later we are going to work on the parameterized constructor. String message is equals to message, right? So this is the another constructor we are defining, and we'll work on the setters and getters. Right. So this is all about the simple example on our model class, something class. We are going to call it as this particular message class as a POJO class here. Okay. And now what we are doing is just we are providing the basic information here. So how we identified in the previous example the person related information, same way we are discussing here message class here. But here with the help of this particular Hibernate, we are going to get an advantage here. We are not going to create any table here. So how this particular data is going to store? How this particular data is going to store? So this particular persistence class. So what is the persistence class here? Message. Because based on this particular persistence class only, we are trying to work on our database here. With the help of this particular persistence class, the data we are going to store in our database here. Okay, now we can see, and here we need to define our mapping file here, because without the mapping file, Hibernate will not integrate with the databases here. So to provide this particular mapping file, what we can do? Getting the point. So to provide this particular mapping file, so first basically if it is our normal Java application, how we are going to write? So with inside this particular main method, we'll try to create an object like this here. Message is equals to message here, and you can define whatever the message we want to write. And so what we will do here, we'll try to call our, with the help of this particular sysout, message dot get message, message dot get message. And here, without integrating with the database here, what we are doing here, we are trying to run a normal Java application here, and we are able to see welcome to Hibernate here. Welcome to Hibernate here. But the same message, if I'm going to integrate with our database, and the message I want to store in the database, and with the help of this particular IDs, I want to load the data. So how we are going to integrate with the database called Postgres database here. Getting the point. So to integrate this particular database here, now what we can do? We need to create our mapping file here. So to create this particular mapping file, now what are the ways we can go for it? Here, so okay, first we'll try here whether it's going to take or not. I want to create an XML file. This particular XML message dot hbm dot xml. Getting the point. So naming convention is very important here. Now observe message dot hbm dot xml. Now what we are doing here? So inside this particular message, so we'll try to connect our the mapping, like message mapping related information here. So this particular mapping is going to provide the database table and columns here. Database table and columns here. So to integrate this particular like what we can call it as a mapping file, what we can do? So we need to find out the HTML mapping file. So let me go to the Hibernate mapping file. I want to copy the particular Hibernate mapping file here. Okay. So back to here. Now what I'm doing here? So this is all about the different example which we copied here. So we need to change to the our example here. Getting the point. So what is the class we are having here? What is the class we are having here? Message here. And so what we want to create the table here. Table also we want to create message only. Right. And so as of now, this particular meta, basically it's going to provide the information, the class description here. And here we can provide message details here. And now we need to work on the ID. All the property it needs to match with our columns here. Now you can see here we are having ID, so we need to change this particular ID. And what is the type we are having here? Getting the point. So what is the type we are having here? So type we are having here long here, right? And the column I want to take as a message underscore ID, and we'll go for the increment here. So why I'm adding this particular increment, I will let you know how this particular increment to the generator increment is going to work. Getting the point. So this is very important. We need to understand here, and so keep this particular one property, and remaining we don't want to use. And name of the property what is the name of the property we are having? And here the property we are having here message, and the column we need to provide here message underscore text here, and the type we are having string. And now you can see here we are having one more object here. Here it is not a primitive types here. Correct the point. Here we are having object type here. So how we can integrate this particular object here? Correct the point. So to integrate this particular object here, now what we can do? So we need to correct the point. So we need to make our relation here. So what is a relation we can go for it here? Now we can see here we are having so one to many, one to one, or some other relations here. There is a many to many, many to one, and one to one. Getting the point. So these are the relation we are seeing here. Now we need to make as a many to one here. So what are the many to one we are going to have? Getting the point. So what are the many to one we are going to have here? Basically here the many we will have a next messages here. Next messages here, and so we are going to make with one column here. The column here next message ID. So as of now, don't worry. The next message ID will will insert as a null for our first record here. We'll see from the second record onwards how this particular data will insert here. Now observe mapping document we provided here. This is all about our mapping document here. Now you can see the name of the class, and whatever the name we are going to provide for the table here. So based on this particular name, the table is going to create it here. And so this is the ID attribute here we are defined here, and one property. Property is nothing but internally it's going to create a one column. The name of the property we define in our Java like message, and how we are going to create a column in our database here. So we are going to provide here, and type we are making as a string. So based on this particular string, what it will do? It will try to create a appropriate column type here, right? And here we are having one to many relations here. So this is all about our mapping document. And here, so this particular message we created here for our main class here. Hibernate main here. Inside this particular Hibernate main, now what we are doing here? So what we are going to write here, we'll try to work on our configuration. So we'll try to find out the configuration information, how it's going to work. Now you can see org hibernate.cfg. The package is coming from the Hibernate. The particular Hibernate configuration class we need to identify here. So once we are familiar with this particular configuration class. Now CFG is equals to new configuration. And here I'm trying to create a configuration object because it is a class. So with the help of this particular configuration class, now what I'm doing is I will try to connect our session factory. So how I'm going to connect this particular session factory? CFG dot build a session factory. Now you can see here we are having build a session factory. Now what it's doing here, this particular build a session factory, so it's trying to return session factory here. Getting the point. So session factory. So from the session factory, now we'll try to work on our open session. Session factory dot open session. Now this particular open session, what is doing here? So we are going to get a session object here. With the help of this particular session, we are going to store data into the database here. Right. Now here, we'll try to create our message object here. So how we created this particular message object is, getting the point. So this is all about the message we are creating it. And after creating this particular message, session dot save here. Session dot save. The message I am trying to save here. The message I am trying to save. And here we missed something here. Session dot begin transaction. Basically, don't worry as of now. So we'll try to focus on the main classes, like how this particular each and every class is going to work. So just for understanding here, we are trying to work on the simple example how we are going to integrating it. After integrating here, we'll try to focus on the each and every class. So how it's going to work here. Getting the point. So transaction here. With the help of this particular transaction here, now what we will do? Transaction dot commit here. Transaction dot commit, and finally session dot close. Session dot close. So this is the basic configuration we need to make here whenever we are trying to connect our application with Hibernate here. Getting the point. Now if you observe carefully, configuration is a one class. So it is to connect our database with help of some configuration information. Getting the point. As of now, we did not provide the database information. Right. So along with that, we did not provide our mapping information. So the mapping information will connect to the database to create the table and columns here. Right. So directly we cannot get the session from this particular configuration. So to get this particular session, now what we are doing is with help of this particular CFG, we are loading the session factory object. So from the session factory, we are having the method called open session. So this particular open session is going to provide the session object here. From the session only, we can save the object. Once a object is saved here, if we are not going to get any exceptions here, we'll try to commit the current transaction here. So to store the data permanently into the database, we need to call transaction.commit here. And after calling this particular transaction.commit here, now what we are doing is we are trying to close session.close here. Getting the point. So this is all about the simple example. But if you observe here how the particular configuration is going to connected here. How this particular configuration is connected here. And how this particular mapping is connected. Now what we can do is, so we need to focus on the configuration example and mapping here. Now first observe, we will try to add our mapping document here. CFG dot add resource here. So what is the resource we need to add here? What is the resource we need to add? Here we need to add message message dot hbm dot xml. So why we need to add here? Basically, we need to create the table of this particular message here. We need to create a table for this particular message. Okay, so now we added the message related information. But if we observe carefully, here we need to work on our configuration file. Getting the point? So our configuration file here. So to connect our configuration file, now what we can do? Now let me add this particular one more XML file. One more XML file. So the XML file will indicate here Hibernate cfg.xml. So see carefully the naming convention how we are making it hibernate.cfg.xml. So it's nothing but it's having configuration information. Now I'm trying to okay, we'll keep as it is here. But now what we can do, we need to load our configuration information here. We need to load our configuration information. So how we can load this particular configuration information? So to load, first we need to find out the configuration file. So let's see, is there any way to find the configuration file in the same class? So as of now, we don't have any, the configuration file I did not see. Hibernate mapping. Let me go for the previous page here. So Hibernate mapping here. Okay, so we'll find out the configuration. So this particular file we need to copy here. So why we need to copy this particular file here? Because if you observe inside this particular file, like what are the information we are having here? What are the information we are having here? The database related information we are having here. Getting the point? Now the property name dilate we are having. So we'll discuss about the dilate here, and we identify the driver class, connection URL, so username and password. So mapping resources. So mapping resource why we need to provide. So basically here we need to like which table we want to create. So those resource information we need to provide here. Okay. Now observe. So first we'll focus on the dilate here. Getting the point. So dilate is nothing but it's going to generate the database specific queries here. It's going to generate database specific queries here. Okay. Now we'll understand here what are the specific queries it's going to generate here. So to generate the Hibernate specific, Postgres database specific queries here, now we need to understand here. Postgres dilate here. Now you can see, so what is our Postgres dilate we are having here? We are having different dilates here, so we'll try to find out the correct one here. And these are not the is a dilate. So okay, it is a dilate configuration information. We'll try to copy this. Basically, these are the advanced dilates we are having here. But now, what we can do, we'll try to change our dilate information here. PostgreSQL. So SQL we are not going to use. Postgres dilate. Sorry. Right. So this is our Hibernate dilate here. And now observe. Okay, Hibernate dilate we provided and driver class name. So what is our driver class name here? In the last section, we already identified our driver class name here. So to find out the driver class name, now what we can do? We'll go to this particular XML file. Okay, here we don't have. Okay, application.jdbc XML here. This is our driver class name here. Right? And what is the username we are having here? First, we'll connect our, sorry, we need to provide here the driver here and URL, username and password. And what is the mapping file we can add here? Message. Observe carefully. Now what we are doing here? We are trying to connect our application with these properties here. Getting the point? So these are the main properties we are having. So dilate is going to generate the Hibernate specific queries here and driver class we need to provide and URL. So username and password. Now observe. So we provided here the configuration file. Okay. Let me run this particular example. Let me run this particular example. If everything goes successful, now what happened here? This particular message does not find here. The message HBM is not finding here. Now what we can do? We'll go to here where this particular message is available here. And I will copy this particular information. Okay, let me run this particular example one more time. and so mapping. The mapping is not found here. Okay. This is available in the different the package here. Now you can see the mapping is loaded, but what we are missing is so class not found. If you observe here, the last record here, what is the exception we are getting here? The class not found exception message here. So now what we need to understand here, where this particular message is implemented. Where this particular message is implemented. Now what we can do, go to this particular message.hbm.file, and the message is available inside this particular package called com.spring.hibernate.message. Hibernate.message here. Getting the point. So this is the way we need to provide the fully qualified name here. Now you can see Hibernate delete must be set when no connection available. No connection available here. Now what you are understanding here? So this particular CFG, the configuration file is not loading here. The CFG, the configuration file, it is not loading here. Now what we can do, if you observe carefully, if I am going to copy the main CFG into our source directory, I am going to run the same example one more time. Still we are getting. ORG Hibernate dilate Postgres SQL dilate. So everything we provided as the same here. Hibernate dilate must be set when no connection. So basically it is a issue with our dilate here. Now okay. Let me see whether our Postgres jar is also available. We'll try to find out this particular. Not this. We need to update this information. Okay. I'm going to run one more time. Why this particular dilate is not loading here? Okay. The version. Hibernate dilate must be set when no connection is available. Configuration build setting dilate factory.java. So this dilate is not finding here. So dilate name, okay. We are getting the particular dilate name null here. And so we'll put a breakpoint here. Why? Like how many the properties we are getting here, we need to understand first. So we can see if all the properties are not coming here, we need to change our configuration information here. So these are the, so here we are getting bin, JDK debug, concurrent version, Java home. Okay. Oh yes. Path. Okay. So basically here, our configuration related information we are not getting here. Okay. We'll see they are getting null here. So because of this particular dilate, so it's getting an error here. What is the dilate we are having? Hibernate dot dilate. Okay, we need to keep as it is the Hibernate dilate. Whether so what they are trying to copy here, new properties here. Build session factory. We need to think about this particular properties here. Okay, we'll try to add the naming convention same here. We need to keep as it is as a Hibernate dilate only. Configuration, session factory, mapping document. Let post is there, so driver class name. Okay, everything we provided same, but the resource here. So now what we can do, we'll try to focus on the Hibernate dot cfg dot xml. Basically, we'll try to run one more time. So without adding this line, it needs to work expectly. Oh, still we are getting mapping document not found. Okay, so the mapping document also we can move in the source directory. Okay, so duplicate class entities we are getting here. Could not parse mapping document from resource. Duplicate where this is trying to call. Okay, build a session factory parse could not parse. Okay, so the duplicate error we resolved here, but now you can see. So this is the different error. Java assist util proxy dot method filter. Now what we can do, so we'll try to take help from the Google here. Basically, we need to add one more jar here. If you observe, so what they are suggesting here in the Stack Overflow, we need to add one more jar here. Basically, Hibernate core is internally, it's depending on two different jars here. And Java assist jar we need to add here. Now you can see, just add Java assist jar here. Right? So why we need to add? Because in the Hibernate 3 version, which is expecting Java assistance here. So this is the jar we need to add. So in that, anyone we can take here. Okay, now you can see I'm adding so the specified jar here, and after adding this, we'll try to run our application one more time. Where is our main file? Now you can see again we are getting an exception. So here we are getting some relation call message does not exist. The relation message does not exist. Now what you are understanding here? So whatever the table we are trying to create, the particular table is not existed here, is nothing but the table is not available here. Now what we can do, basically we need to create the table. We need to create the table here, or so we are having option here, we can provide the one more property here. We are having an option, we can provide one more property. The name of the property here, Hibernate dot HPM2DDL dot auto update. Along with this particular property, I want to take one more property here, Hibernate dot show underscore SQL. I want to make two. So whenever I'm making this particular show underscore SQL, what it will do? It will try to generate the the particular SQL queries where it's going to generate on our console here. Okay, observe. I'm going to run one more time here. Now you can see Now what you are understanding is, so select max message ID from the message table and is trying to insert the particular message. So in the last class, so we identify these are the same message concepts here. These are the same message concept or not. Insert into message text, these are the particular columns and these are the values we are going to insert it here. Now what you are understanding here, so first we need to see this particular message is inserted or not. First we need to see this particular message is inserted or not. Getting the point. Now what we can do, so to understand this particular message, first we need to go for our database. Select star from message here. Now you can see the message ID we are getting one, the message text here, whatever the message text we are provided, welcome to Hibernate. The message text is implemented here, like it is stored in the database here. Getting the point? It is stored in our particular database here. Now what you are understanding here? So without adding, so without creating the particular table here, we are able to insert the data here. Getting the point? So just because of this particular mapping document. If you observe carefully, the columns are, so what we provided in the mapping document, message underscore ID, message underscore text, and next underscore message underscore ID. So where we implemented here in our message underscore HBM file. Now you can see this is the ID property, but the column we provided as a message underscore ID and message underscore text we provided. For the many to one relation, now what we are doing here, next to underscore message underscore ID. Getting the point. Now what you understand here? So whatever the mapping document we are going to provide, getting the point. So whatever the mapping document we are going to provide. So based on this particular mapping document, the particular table with columns are going to created here. And whenever the specified table, the specified database we are going to specify, in the specified location, this particular data is going to store. Now observe, if I'm going to run one more time, now you can see, so one more insert query we are seeing it. With the help of ID2. How this particular ID is generating here. Now if you see, here we just provided only text here. Only we provided text here. So we are not providing much information here. Only text message we provided here, but recording ID we did not provide here. But how this particular IDs are generating here. Getting the point. So this particular IDs are going to generated based on this particular increment here. So we'll focus on this particular generator, how these particular generators are going to work in our Hibernate. Getting the point. Based on based on this particular generator, these values are going to incremented here. So what about this particular next column ID? So why we are making null regarding this particular next message ID? Because we created only message object, but we don't have a reference to the next message here. We don't have a reference to the next message here. Okay, we'll see how this particular next message is going to work here. Getting the point. Now what we can do, first we need to load the data here. So whatever the data we stored in our database here, sorry. Now you can see this particular data is already stored in our database called Postgres database. Now what I'm doing is, with help of this particular data, we need to load here. So to load here, again, okay. So basically the HBM2 DDL, what it will do, it will try to create or update whatever the information we are going to provide in our configuration file. So let me open the configuration file. Basically, here we are having different types of the particular property values here. So in that we selected as a update. This particular update, what it will do? First, it's going to check whether the particular table is created or not. So if it is created, it will try to update the particular columns here. If the table is not created here, what it will do? It will try to create the table based on the information which we provided in our HBM file. And after creating the table and so whatever the information we are trying to store, so those information is going to store into the appropriate columns here. So this is going to taken care by the HBM2 DDL at all. So in that we are having create hyphen update and update and drop we are going to have. So we have different properties. We'll see in our upcoming classes. So what are the HBM2 DDL, the property values we are going to have. Getting the point. So just here, it's going to just we are providing the property here to create the table and to update the particular column here. Right. And the second property show underscore SQL, what is doing here? So it's trying to generating Hibernate related queries here on our console here. So this is very important here. Now back to here, I want to load the particular data here. I want to load the particular data here. Now how we can load here? So to load here, I want to comment out these two sections of code because again, we don't want to save here. With the help of this particular session here, session dot find method. And here, now what I'm trying to write here, we need to define our query here. Inside this particular find, we can define the query here. So to define this particular query, now what I'm trying to write here, from, so message. Basically, message is our persistence class here. It's not a table name here. Getting the point. So whatever the SQL we are going to write here, we need to define our the class information, not our table and column information. So this is the difference between SQL and HQL. Now I'm going to write HQL here, Hibernate query language here. Observe from message. So it's nothing but select star from message and where if we want to make any condition here, we can go for the where. Getting the point. But now what I'm doing here, I'm not going to write any where condition here. I'm not going to write any where condition. I want to load all the objects which are available inside the particular message table. And order by what is the property we are having inside this particular message class. M dot message is nothing but ascending order. I'm trying to load based on the message ascending order. Okay. The find method is deprecated. Okay, no problem. We can go for the same method here. And now let's see. So add this particular suppress warning. So list. And here, what is the generic type we are going to get? Message. I want to print this particular messages. So what are the messages I want to print here? Find dot size and messages found. Now observe what I am trying to write here. Action dot get ID get message. Getting the point. Action dot get ID, action dot get message here. But here I want to print with our this out here. Okay. Now observe here. I'm trying to load the two records information here. Observe select query here. Getting the point. The particular select query I'm trying to load. So two message records found here and message ID. So the particular message ID and the particular message here. Getting the point. And to find out, like if you want to print in the same manner, we can go for it. Okay. So one and welcome to everything. So is appended here without a space here. But now we are having two records. The particular two records we are trying to load. Right? And the query now you can see select message ID as a message ID, message text message name, next message ID from the message and order by message test. Getting the point. So this is basically SQL query it is. It is not a HQL, Hibernate query language. It is our structure query language here. So now you can see it is generated as a SQL here. But what is a query we define here? This is we define as a Hibernate query language. Hibernate query language is going to start from the, so we are not going to use select here. Directly we can go for from. This is the name of the our class and this is the property of the particular class here. So whatever the property we are going to make the condition, we can go for the property. So now you can see here the property we are having message here. So I taken as a message here. But the particular column, what is the column we are having here? What is the column we are having here? Message underscore text here. But we did not provide the message underscore text here. Just we provided as a message here. Just we provided as a message. Getting the point. So this is the difference between Hibernate query language and the structure query language here. So now you can see compared to the JDBC. So now what are the advantage we are getting here? We are not creating any tables and columns here, and we are not generating, like we are not providing the particular ID values here. So IDs and table creation, column updation, everything is going to handle by the Hibernate here. And we are having one advantage here. So instead of working with SQL structure query language, we can go for the Hibernate query language here. So directly we can work on the class and properties here. So instead of working with the table and column, we are having an option. We can go for the class with properties here. Right. So this is all about the find method to load the object from the database here. So now you can see the mapping document here. So first we'll try to understand the mapping document here. So what are the information we provided inside this particular mapping document? So just a simple example, we identified, we insert the record and we load the data from the, the table called message here. But observe here, inside this particular Hibernate mapping here, first we are having DTD. So what exactly this particular DTD will contain? Basically, these are the information which we are going to get from this particular DTD file here. Now let's see. If I'm going to provide this particular DTD here, so it is trying to download the particular DTD file. Okay. Now, so we'll try to see what are the DTD information we are having here. Okay. How we can see. What I will do, I will copy into. Okay. Here we can make in our Hibernate. So observe how this particular DTD file is available here. So this is our DTD file. It's contain the information like this here. Now, so some of the comments here. First, we need to find out the Hibernate mapping here, where this particular Hibernate mapping is available. Now you can see here we are having Hibernate here. So they are going to make an element here. The element we are having Hibernate mapping. So inside this particular Hibernate mapping, so these are the some other information we are going to have. And now you can see inside Hibernate mapping file, what is the tag we are having? Hibernate mapping. So which is coming from the where? Which is coming from this particular element tag here. This is our element tag here. So to get the appropriate information, getting point, to get the appropriate information, so we need to define the DTD file here. Now you can see after this particular mapping file, we are going to have our property also. So now you can see element class. So element class. So where we are loading this particular element class. So this is the class here. Getting the point. And everything is going to get from the DTD file. And once we add this particular file, getting the point. Once we fill up some information, and it's going to validate here. So whatever the information we provided, whether the information is correct or not, how we are going to validate with the help of this particular DTD file here. Getting the point, with the help of this particular DTD file. So this is the the basic information we can define in our DTD file, so that we can provide the information and we can validate the information. So whatever the HBM file we are going to add, and with the help of this particular HBM file, we are going to create the table and columns. So these are the advantage we are going to get whenever we are going to implement this particular DTD file, right? And later, so what exactly the class attribute is containing? Class attribute is nothing but, so what is the name of the class we are going to create the table for this particular class? We need to provide the information here. And internally meta information. So it will try to provide the class related information, the description related information here. And ID. So ID we are going to make as a unique here. It is nothing but the primary key. Getting the point. So whenever we are making this particular ID, internally it's going to generate as our primary key here. Let's see whether we are able to see this particular table or not. And now you can see message primary key. Okay, so primary key is available on the which column? Message ID. Carrying the point. The message ID we are having primary key, but how we are generating this particular message ID as a primary key? We did not provide any information here, but this particular ID itself is going to generate as a primary key. Getting the point. This particular ID internally it's going to generate as the primary key and remaining the particular property. So for the columns here, for this particular columns here, getting the point. Now understand this particular many to one. We'll focus on the many to one later whenever we are trying to discuss on the our map like one to one relations or whenever we are trying to integrate with multiple classes here. Getting the point. So as of now, ignore this particular menu to one here. So just focus on the ID and the columns. Now you can think here how many columns, like how many properties we are going to have. So we are going to define the multiple properties like this. Getting the point. So this is all about the simple the message related example here, and we define the all the information in our mapping document. And here, so this particular mapping document is going to available for the our each and every persistence class. So each persistence class will have a unique mapping file here. Unique mapping file here. So this is very important here. And now you can see if I'm going to load and update the record here. If you observe carefully, so just now we identified find method. Just now we identified find method. Now what I will do, I'm going to work on the load method here. So with the help of this particular session dot load, and here, so what is the class we are trying to load? The class here we are having message dot class and ID one, and I am trying to load this particular ID. This particular long also it's deprecated from the 9 version here. But now observe and here message object we are going to get. Getting the point. So here we are going to get a message object here. So based on this particular message here, now what I'm trying to write here, observe carefully what I'm doing here. Based on this particular message here, I'm trying to change the text information. I'm trying to change the text information, something called set message. And what is the message we can do? Change it the text. And so one more object I'm creating. New message. And here I want to add next message. Getting the point. Next message I'm trying to add. So whenever I'm trying to add this particular next message here, now observe message dot set next message here. Right. So here now you can see we are loading the particular object from the database, and we are changing the particular method text here, and we are creating one more object to make the many to one relation here. So how we are making the many to one relation? Now you can see set next message. So this is the message and this is the next message, but both are having same object reference. Now you can see here we are having the message, here also we are having the message. But whenever you are passing here next message, now what we are doing here, we are making the particular object information. It is not a string message, it is a object we are passing here. Getting the point. And so once we load here, directly we are trying to commit and we are not closing it. Again, now if you see, here I am not saving, getting the point, you are not saving any object here and you are not updating any object here. So directly what I am doing here, I am trying to call commit here. I am trying to call commit. So now you can see how this particular example is going to work. So how many the queries we are able to see here? First, select query we are able to see here, and second one we are getting the max record here. Getting the point. Second one we are getting max record, and the third one now you can see we are trying to inserting one more record here. Getting the point. We are able to see one more record, and finally we are trying to update the record here. Okay, now what we can do, we'll try to go for the database and we'll see how this particular records are updated. Okay, let me select this particular message. So carefully observe here. So this is our first ID. Getting the point. Basically in the first, because now you can see what is the ID we are passing? First record. Right. Based on this particular ID, now what we did here, we load an object and we change the message here. And previously, what was the message we had? Welcome to Hibernate. We are having the message. Now I change to the message called this. The change the text message I implemented. And later, what we did here, we created one object here. We created one object called new next message. With the help of this particular next message, so now what we are doing here, whatever the object we loaded from this particular session, we loaded from the session dot load method. Based on this particular object references, we are trying to update the record. Now, what you are understanding here? Whatever the object we load from the database, based on this particular object, we added the set next message here. Previously, we don't have this particular next message object information. After loading here, we update the next message. How we updated here? With the help of this particular creating new object. So why we are creating it? Now you can go for the message object here. Now you can see message, the next message is expecting message object here. It is not the string or any the primitive data type here. It is expecting object here. So to provide the parameter as an object here, we need to create an object here. And later, so we set the object here. Now, whenever we are creating it, and one more ID is going to create it here. Because, so we need to insert the one more record. We need to insert the one more record here. For this object here, we don't have a next message here. For this object, we don't have a next message ID. And this object we are having next message. But how we are making? With the help of this particular by calling the method here. So now you can see, so the next message, we don't have a next message ID. But whatever the existing object we loaded with the help of this particular ID, so we are having the next message ID here. Getting the point. So this is the way we can make the relation here. But if you observe both the table, the pointing to the same table here, both objects are pointing to the same table here, but here the storing IDs are different here. So 3. The 3 is pointing to this particular next message ID. If I'm going to have any next message ID, so we can refer to the one more object here. But as of now, we don't have any the particular message ID here, right? And one more we need to understand here. Here we did not use any session.save or session.update here. So without using also the data are updating here. How this particular data are updating here? Getting the point. Basically, so initial commit, like initial saving the data, we call the method called session.save. We call the method called session.save. But now you can see the entire section we commented here. Without saving the data, we are able to see that data. Because of Hibernate is having one advantage called automated dirty checking here. So this is one of the advantage feature we are having in our Hibernate here. What it will do, whenever we are having within the same session, whenever we are having within the same session and transaction, without calling the session dot save or update here, the data is going to inserted and updated into the appropriate tables here. Getting the point. So this is major advantage we are going to get from the Hibernate here. So any questions regarding this particular load method and the message related information here? Okay. Now observe here. Basically, what I want to provide here, this particular automatic dirty checking, what it will do is going to save our explicitly asking the Hibernate to update the database here. So whenever we modify the state of this particular object here, whenever we modify the state of this particular object, so within the same transaction here, so this is also important here. If you are trying to work on the multiple transaction here, again we need to call the session.save or update here. But the advantage we are going to get within the same transaction, if I'm going to update the state of the object here. Now you can see, so basically this is the object we are loading. But now what we are doing here, with help of this particular object reference here, we are trying to change the some of the information. So whenever we are trying to change the information, now we are trying to modify the state of object here. We are trying to modify the state of object here. So this is very important here. So without calling the explicit the session.save or update, so the transaction is going to take care of saving the data into the appropriate database here, right? And so can you please show the exception while using the, so if I'm going to provide 4, this particular fourth record is not available in our database here. Now you can see no row given with identifier existed here. So the select query is generated. So why this particular select query is generated? Because we need to load the data from the database. So because of this, the select query is generated. But now you can see what is the ID we are providing here? 4. So based on this particular message ID, we don't have a object here. Now you can see here object not found exception. Object not found exception we are getting here. Right. So this is all about the, so whenever the particular object is not found in a database, we are going to get an object not found exception here. Now you can see, so these are about the automatic dirty checking here, and we need to move on to the so understanding of this particular Hibernate architecture here. So Hibernate architecture, first we need to understand. So what are the main interfaces we are going to have, and what are the main implementation classes we are going to have? Getting the point. So we need to focus here. Basically, the primary interfaces are the first we need to learn in our Hibernate concepts here. Okay. Now, so what are the primary interfaces here? First primary interface is session here. Session, and the second one transaction, and the third one query here. So as of now we did not discuss about the query, but these are the primary interfaces of Hibernate architecture level. But using these three, now what we are going to write? We are going to perform our code operations here. Getting the point? We'll try to perform the code operation here. This is very important here. Now, after this, we are having configuration class. Configuration is not a interface here. It is a class here. What exactly the configuration class is doing here? Getting the point? It will try to configure the most of the Hibernate configuration related information. But now you can see with the help of this particular Hibernate cfg.xml, now what we are doing is, so inside this particular configuration file, we are having how we are going to configure how we are going to configure, like how we are going to integrate with our Hibernate with our Postgres database. So those information we define inside the configuration file. And we are having some of the callback interfaces here. So the callback interfaces, it's going to communicate with our events here, like whenever the data is updated or whenever the data is deleted. So we can define the particular events here. So we are having so different kinds of events here. So interceptor, lifecycle, and validatable. Okay. Now, first we'll focus on to the session interface. Session interface here. So basically, session is our interface here. Session is our interface here. So what exactly the session will contain here? Session is having some of the different methods here, but now you can see session is a interface here, right? And here, this particular session is a one of the primary interface, so used in our Hibernate application here. And session is our lightweight here. Getting the point. So we can create and do multiple, like we can create and do design multiple session objects here, right? And so one important we need to understand here. So whenever we are going to create this particular object here, the application will need to create and do destroy the session here. In the application level, whenever we are going to create this particular session here, we need to create and do destroy the particular session here. So because of this, now what I'm doing is I'm trying to close the session here. Session dot close. So it's nothing but we are trying to destroy this particular session here. Now, basically, what are the information we can understand? Session is one of the primary interface. We are going to work, like we are going to work with the Hibernate application here, and it is a lightweighted here. We can create multiple sessions, and we can create and destroy the multiple sessions here. And here, it is not a thread safe here. Whenever we are trying to work on the Hibernate application with the multiple threads here, this particular thread is not a safe here, because so we cannot expect here which thread is going to update the record here. We cannot expect which thread is going to update the record here. So this is we need to handle explicitly when we are trying to work on the multi-threading applications here. Okay, and so this particular session is between our configuration, like a connection and a transaction here. The connection we are going to get from the configuration here. So the session is going to communicate between the two concepts here, connection and transactions here. And we are going to call the so session.load and session.find, session.persist. So we are having some different methods here to communicate with our database here, right? So we'll see what are the methods we are going to have in the session in our upcoming classes here. Just to focus on the what exactly the session is going to communicate here. And the second one we are having session factory. Second one we are having here session factory. So session factory, basically we are going to get from the configuration here. So based on the configuration object here, we are trying to load our session factory. And session factory is not a lightweight here. Getting the point. So it is a heavyweight here. Whenever we are trying to create a multiple session factories, we need to think very carefully while creating this particular session factory here. And each database we are going to create one session factory. In our application, if I'm going to have so 3 database, if I'm going to communicate here, so 3 session factory objects we are going to create here. But each database we are going to create multiple sessions here. But each database we are going to create only one session factory object here. One session factory object here. So this is very important. We need to understand here. And session factory is a thread set here. We can run multiple threads whenever we are trying to work on the multi-threaded application. The session factory internally is going to handle the particular multi-threading environments here, right? And if so, this is the session factory is So this the particular session factory, how we are going to load with help of this particular configuration here. With help of this particular configuration here. Now the configuration here. So configuration, it is a one of the class here. So what it will do? It is used to configure the application properties here. Sorry, Hibernate properties here. Hibernate properties here, right? And configuration, like configuration is going to load the mapping documents here. So while like after loading this particular Hibernate mapping documents here, it will try to create the table and the columns based on the mapping documents here. And after creating this particular mapping document here, what it will do? So it will try to give an option to load the session factory here. And how we are loading it with help of this particular configuration here. So now you can see cfg dot build session factory. Whenever we are calling this particular build session factory, we are trying to load the session factory object. But now, first we need to understand the configuration. So configuration, what is doing it? It will try to configure the Hibernate configuration information. After configuring here, it will try to create the like a table and column based on the mapping documents here. Based on this particular mapping documents here. So this is the work is going to taken care by the configuration. And session factory, what we are doing is, so for each database, we are going to create one session factory. And so this particular session factory internally, it's going to work on the session here. But now each database, we are going to work on the one session factory. And the session factory is going to work on our multi-threaded environments. So we'll see more about this particular session factory, so how it's going to work, right? And transaction here. Basically, transaction is one of our optional API here. Hibernate application may choose this particular transaction or may not choose here. But if you choose this particular transaction, we are going to get some additional benefits here. So the additional benefits we identified just now, getting the point. So automatic dirty checking. So these are the advantages we are going to get from the transaction here. And internally, if I'm not using explicit transaction here, Hibernate internally is going to work on some of the JDBC related transaction or JTA related transactions here. Right. And this is all about the transaction. So what exactly the transaction it's going to contain? It will try to commit and roll back the data based on our exceptions here. Based on our exception while we are inserting or updating, or we are trying to delete the data from the databases here. And we are having other two interfaces here. So what are the other two interfaces we are having here? The first one we are having query here. Now you can see here we are having query which is coming from the org.hibernate. org.hibernate. So what exactly the query interface is going to contain? And this particular query is going to perform the queries against the particular database here. Getting the point. So based on this particular query, we are going to create the queries, different kinds of queries here. Like we can create the Hibernate queries, and we can go for the structure related queries also. SQL also we can create, and HQL also we can create with help of this particular queries here, right? And we'll see more about this particular query in our upcoming classes, and we'll focus on to the criteria here. We'll focus on to the criteria. So this particular criteria also, which is coming from the org Hibernate here, and this also one interface. And criteria is going to work on the criteria is going to work on the based on this particular objects here. Based on this particular objects here. Getting the point. Basically, how this particular, so inside this particular criteria, we are going to have different methods. With help of this particular method, we'll try to implement the queries here. We'll try to implement the queries here. With help of this particular criteria, so we are going to load the appropriate particular model classes here. And by loading this particular model classes, if I want to make any restrictions here, or if I want to make some conditions here, so in criteria we'll have each method here. So based on the method, we can make the different restrictions here, right? So we'll see what are the methods we are having in our criteria, right? And callback interfaces. So just now we discussed the particular callback interfaces. So first one is a life cycle, and second one is a validatable. So what exactly it will do? Basically, this particular callback interfaces, it will try to receive a notification when something is when something is happening in our Hibernate applications here. Getting the point. So something is nothing but whenever we are trying to insert or update or we delete or loading an object. Getting the point. If we want to get any notification information, now what we can do? We can go for this particular callback interfaces. So what are the callback interfaces we are having here? The first one, life cycle. So life cycle is one of the interface here. We can implement this particular life cycle interface, and we can provide the methods here. So let's see what are the methods we are having inside this particular life cycle here. Observe here on save method and on update method. So on delete method or on load method. So these are the methods we are having here. These are the methods. If I want to get any notification on the each CUD operation here, we can go for this particular life cycle, and we can write whatever the notification we want to get here. Getting the point. So this is just tracking related, we can call it is this particular interface. If anything is happened, so this event is going to trigger, and it will provide the information here. Like same way, we are having validatable here. So the validatable also, it's going to perform the same information. Let me provide the type here. So now you can see validatable. Only we are having one method called validate here. So to validate the data, we can go for this particular interface called validatable. Okay. So we'll see simple example on the validatable and life cycle here, how exactly it's going to work. And one more interface we are having here, type here. One more interface we are having here, type. So what exactly the type is going to work here? Where is the type here? So find out this is the annotation we are having, and Java Net org, this is one different here. Now you can see org hibernate dot type. org hibernate dot type. So what exactly this particular type interface is going to work? Getting the point. Whenever we are trying to add any the columns, right, in the property we are going to provide the different types here, the different types of the property like string, long, double, or boolean, char, int. Getting the point. So we are going to different like provide the different data types here, and whenever we are providing the different data types here, how this particular data types are going to convert it into the database column type here, the database column data type here. So everything is going to handle by this particular type interface here, this particular type interface, right? Inside this particular type here, we will have a different types of are implemented internally, like predefined implementation classes we are having. So if you are not interested with predefined classes, now what you can do, you can go for the custom classes by implementing this particular type interface. Now you can see what are the information we are having inside this particular type here. So is association type, collection type, or entity type, any type, component type. Getting the point. So SQL type, column span. These are the methods we are having. So based on this particular method, we can go for so what is the custom type we want to implement here? What is the particular custom type we want to implement? So we can implement this particular type interface. We can write the code. So the particular type is going to converted into the column data type here. And and whenever we are want to work on the custom data type, so the custom data type object here, something called message. Inside this particular message, if I'm having the property here, where is the class? Here I'm having the property called message. So message is having different two property, right? So this is we are expecting string and long. So it's happily converted into the column specific data type. But whenever we are discussing this, now what happens here? So here we are having an option. You can go for the user type or composite type. Getting the point. Now what we can do, so using this particular type class, type interface, we can override the specific method. We can define what are the data type we want to provide while inserting data into the appropriate this particular property here. Getting the point. So this is going to handle by the type interface. We'll say more about the type, how exactly is going to work here. And so extension interfaces here. Extension interfaces. What exactly the extension interfaces we are having here? If we want to generate the primary key, basically the primary key we are not generating anything. So just we are providing the generator class. The generator class Hibernate is going to take care of the generating the primary key. But instead of like taking the help from the Hibernate, now what we can do? We are having one interface here, identifier generator. Identifier generator here. Now you can see identifier generator. So this particular identifier generator interface is going to take care of so generating the value one by one based on the table like the data insertion here. Basically, this interface is already implemented in the Hibernate itself, but using this particular interface, if we want to provide the custom generation, the custom primary key generation here, we can implement this particular method, interface here. So what are the method we are having here? Generate. Generate we are having here. So session IMPL, session implementer and object here. So what is the entity we want to provide? So this is we are going to take care of this particular interface here. After implementing this particular interface, we need to override the generate method and we can define whatever we want to generate the primary key value here. And later we are having dilate here. So just now we discussed the dilate concepts here. So the dilate is going to generate the database specific queries. Getting the point. If we want to define the custom generation queries here, now what we can do? We can go for the dilate interface. Maybe dilate, I think abstract class here. Yes, dilate is our abstract class here. So now you can see here on top of the class, we are able to see small icon. It is A. A is nothing but abstract class. Abstract class here. Dilate is our abstract class. We can extend from this particular dilate class. We can override this. So whatever the queries we want to generate here. Whatever the queries we want to generate, we can override this. Basically, the everything like the messages, the query generation, everything is handled inside this particular dilate class. We don't want to take any risk here, but still, if we want to provide any custom implementation, we can go for this particular class. So these are the primary interfaces are available inside this particular Hibernate. So this we can call it as a Hibernate architecture here, and with the help of this particular primary interfaces here, we are going to perform the operations here. We are going to perform the operations here. So let's see, we'll try to find out the basic configuration here. Let me find out the basic configuration about the simple example, whatever the example we discussed so far here, we need to find out the different configuration. So as of now, we connected with our CFG XML file. Getting the point. So we connected with our XML file here. But instead of connecting with our XML file, if I want to connect with properties here, if I want to connect with our properties here, now what we can do? We can go for the Hibernate.properties file, where we can define this particular Hibernate property file here inside this particular source directory. So here we can create a file here. Hibernate.properties file. Okay. So this particular property file we will provide the information later. But now observe in the mapping document here, the main class here, now what we are doing is add resource. So cfg.add resource here. Whenever we are calling this particular add resource, what is doing internally? So the configuration will find this particular mapping file. Based on this particular mapping file, it will try to create the table and with the columns here. And along with this, we are going to have one more class here. So cfg.add class method. Add class method. Now observe what exactly this particular add class is going to work. Message.class. Message.class. Whenever we are adding this particular add class method, and internally is going to check based on this particular class is going to append with hbm.xml. Is going to append with our hbm.xml. Right. So instead of adding this particular resource and specifying the mapping information, now what we can do? We can go for the add class method. We can define whatever the model class object we want to create here. But internally, Hibernate, what it will do? It will try to look for the particular mapping document with help of this particular class here and with extension called hbm.xml. With extension called hbm.xml. Getting the point? So this is going to take care by the Hibernate here whenever we are going to add class here. But the add class is not going to work in our case because the message we defined in the package called this. So if we observe, if I'm going to comment out this particular cfg.add resource here, we'll see how this particular application is going to work. Oh, nice. So okay. Basically, Hibernate mapping file we already provided in the source directory. So I thought this particular file we did not copy it yet. Because now you can see in the Hibernate folder location we are having hibernate.hbm file. In the source directory also we are having here. So now if I'm removing this particular file, we will get an exception here. But this file cannot be found because this is not located in our source directory. So inside the source we are having different folder. From the different folder we are trying to load this particular data here. We are trying to load this particular data here. Now let's see how this particular data is inserted here. How this particular data is inserted here. Getting the point. Back to here. This is the one advantage we are going to get from the add class here. So instead of specifying the resource information, so just we can go for the class information. But we need to define the mapping Hibernate mapping document here. So without the Hibernate mapping document here, we cannot work on the Hibernate related example here. Okay. So now we identified the add class method. So finally, we created this particular Hibernate.properties and Hibernate.cfg.xml. Now what we can do, whenever we are going to work on the Hibernate.properties here, so it's going to check for the first is it will give you the priority on the Hibernate.properties, and inside this particular Hibernate.properties, whatever the information we are having, so those information is going to load it here. Those information is going to load it. Let's see. I want to copy all the information into this particular properties. and delete this particular property. So we don't want to use the property here because now we are trying to load from the where we are trying to load from the our configuration here, and so this is the way we can define the our configuration properties here. Now you can see equal. Okay. So it's not taking the format here. Manually we can do the format here. Getting the point. This is all about the our Hibernate properties here. Okay. So we save the this particular property file. Again, I'm going for the configuration here. Whenever I'm trying to work on this particular configuration here, I'm commenting here. Getting the point. I'm trying to load with the Hibernate properties here. Now you can see, so after commenting this particular config method, so happily we are trying to insert the data here. Happily we are trying to insert the data into the database here. So this is all about the property file here. Basically, Hibernate is going to look for the Hibernate.property file in a first priority. If the property file is not found, it will look for the configuration XML here. Configuration XML here. Cutting the pen. So this is the way we can work on the property file as well as configuration file. So the remaining example will try to work on the property file here. Okay. Now inside this particular configuration file, so do I need to discuss anything inside this particular configuration file? So anyone having any questions regarding this particular configuration file? Because all the information which we copy from the previous example here. All the example which we copy from the previous example here. So we don't have the specific example here. Okay. Now what we can do, mapping document here. The mapping document here, DTD. So DTD will contain the basic information, so which is coming from the our Hibernate configuration DTD. Right, inside the Hibernate configuration DTD, we'll have a configuration element and a session factory element and some of the properties here. So this is, we don't want to discuss more about the configuration here. Now we need to work on the Log4j. So we need to focus on the Log4j here. Basically, the logging framework here, it's going to provide the more information about our application here, how the objects are created internally. Correct, fine. How this particular objects are created internally with the help of this particular log framework, we can understand here. So in that case, now what is the log framework I'm going to use? Here I want to define the log4j dot properties here. In the source directory only I want to define. So whenever other here file I want to create here, the name of the file here log4j dot properties here. Inside this particular log4j dot properties here, now what we will do, we'll copy from the Google the log4j dot properties here. So just for understanding, I want to provide here how this particular logging framework is going to work in our Hibernate here. and so this is I want to provide here. This is our logging framework I want to use here. Now you can see if I'm going to run the same application here, any changes here? Maybe we did not see any changes. So any difference we are getting log4j prope or okay. So the file name we provided properly only. Now, so what I want to write here, I want to define Hibernate related information here. Getting the point. Hibernate related information I want to provide here. Okay, so to provide this particular Hibernate related information, now what we can do. So here we can go for the info level log4j dot log4j dot to logout dot org dot Hibernate. Getting the point. Org dot Hibernate here. So we can provide the what is the level we want to provide. Org Hibernate we are having the package name I'm giving it log4j dot logout dot org dot Hibernate. I can provide info. So we'll see how this particular information is going to work internally with help of this particular Hibernate here. No. So we can go for the log4j console appender file out to root logger what we provided here error and sd out. So error we don't want to make. Here we can go for the warning. Root logger we can go for the warning and here and so Hibernate information we are not getting here. Hibernate info. So org Hibernate. We'll see. We'll change with small letters. Sorry. Okay. Fail to load. Okay. Static logger binder. Okay. Basically, which is expecting a static logger binder here. Now to download so now you can see this particular static SLF4J is not founding. Now what we can do? Okay. Static logger is not finding here. Now we'll try to find out from the Google here. We need to add one jar here. So now you can see what is the jar we need to add. So these are the two sections we need to add here. SLF4J API. Getting the point. SLF4J API we need to add here. Okay. So log12 SLF4J API. We'll copy this too. And we'll paste in our let me run the same example here. So whether the logging framework is affecting or not, we need to understand here. Now we can see the log message we are able to see. Getting the point. So these many messages we did not find out the previously, but now we are able to see these are the log messages. So how we are able to see with help of this particular log4j here. With help of this particular log4j properties here, So using this particular log4j, now what we are doing is, now you can see what are the information. So using this particular driver class, Oracle driver, Postgres driver, and at URL call. So this is our URL, and username we are getting, password we are getting as a encrypted here, and connection properties. So database information, right? Now you can see what they are doing internally. So schema updated completely, and columns, these are the columns here, and this is our table called public message table, right? So these are the information we are able to see from the log4j. And if we want to change anything, now what we can do? So you don't want to get any information. If you want any get warning information or error related information, correct the point. So we can change the log4j here. And this is the pattern here. We are going to see how this particular message we want to generate here. How we want to generate this particular message here. Carrying the point. So this is all about the simple example on our Hibernate here. So using this particular like log4j properties, we'll try to run our examples here. Right. So we'll try to work on the more example in tomorrow. How we are going to work on the persistence classes here. So we'll try to create a multiple classes here. When we are trying to work on the multiple classes here, how this particular relations we want to identify here. So this section here we are going to discuss in our tomorrow session here. So any questions regarding our today's session? Okay. So if we don't have anything here, we'll try to continue tomorrow.